All right, speaking of lazy, joking, next up is a virtual presenter, James Dalton. Now, I actually love it when people discover archives a little bit later in life. So this presenter actually has a background in mechanical engineering and product development. Initially, he was in the railway industry and spent also 17 years in the global medical device, in a global medical device firm. He had a career change 5 years ago and also an itch or a desire, if you will, to pursue his passion for railway history, which resulted in him taking on the role of archives manager for the Australian Railway Historical Society. Since then, James has shepherded the Australian Railway Historical Society archives through a period of change and improvement. So please welcome James, who will be speaking with us today on developing a not-for-profit archive through improved awareness to access and archival practice. I don't quite know how to
take it away.
James, I don't know where he is. James, when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm going to talk a bit about an archive that's part of a historical society, and you see there a view of the front of our relatively new building. So I'll put that into context shortly. Next slide, please. So the society began actually in 1933. It's been around for quite a long period of time, and an archive accumulated really from about the 1960s. And in the last since that time, it's grown to be quite large. It's been society has been run by volunteers since 2000, until 2000 rather, and now there are 3 paid staff. But we still rely heavily on volunteers for a lot of the digitisation and cataloguing work, and their continuous incredible efforts have resulted in about 80% or more of 800,000 images and about 2 million objects in total being digitised and catalogued. So that's pretty impressive. The archives are used and have been used for some time to support the production of 2 monthly magazines and other publications. But more recently, because we're self-funded, we're trying to, it's very important for us to extract more value out of our archives, and we do consulting work for heritage architects and the railways and other individuals. You see there a picture of the building as it was about 5 years ago. It's pretty nondescript and anonymous, and so we've really, gone on a journey to transform what we have into something that's much more widely known about. Next slide, please. I'll talk quickly about the collection in a bit more detail. We have more than 60,000 original engineering drawings, things like buildings and locomotives and rolling stock and surveys and so forth. We've got more than 1 million images in the collection now, which is pretty staggering. There are various documents, including timetables, operating instructions, regulations, technical information and so forth, and about between 5,000 and 6,000 monographs. We also have a very large collection of magazines, reports and newspaper clippings and film sequences. In total, it's about 3 shelf kilometres. Next slide, please. There have been some shortcomings, and that's what we've been trying to address. There was no consistent collection management system. There were lots of little indexes using Excel or using Access or using Word documents or even handwritten lists. And so finding information was often a process of going through all these lists separately. It's very time consuming. There was no written acquisition, accession or cataloguing processes, and although our volunteers are fantastic, none of them really had any professional skills in archives. One of the issues too with volunteers is that they often can own an area of the archive. They see that as their area, and if they're only coming in once every week or once a month, it can be some time before that part of the collection catches up to the rest of it, if it ever does. And so that's something that we've been addressing more recently. There was a bit of a lack of structured decision making, again, because there weren't a lot of processes that enabled that. And public access was via a reading room. You can see a picture of the reading room on the right there. It's pretty small, very cramped. You'd get about 6 or 8 people in there at times, and it was a bit like a zoo. And so hence the decision to move to a new building, which I'll get to in a minute. But archives were held across 2 sites, which had some advantages and certainly resolved a space problem. But there were some issues around, understanding exactly what we were holding. And as a consequence, there was quite a lot of duplication in the collection. And there was no proactive acquisition plan. So the collection grew really through ad hoc donation of items. Next slide, please. So we undertook a bit of a transformation, which is still underway, and I guess COVID put about a 2-year hole in our program, so we're really just getting back into the swing of things now. But we consolidated into a new premises, which was renovated. We put an eye-catching bit of public art on the front, and we've got quite a busy road in front of us, so that's a really good awareness tool. We've implemented within that space, there's an archive room that's we have gas fire suppression and a nice big compactus that we've filled up pretty quickly. We've implemented new processes and procedures. We've been doing a lot of cataloguing and labelling. We've introduced better archival practices and acid-free boxes and those sorts of things, which eliminated a lot of cardboard boxes that were non-standard and in pretty poor state in some cases. We've implemented a collection management system, which is a huge task in itself. I'll get to that a little bit shortly. And we've had the collection assessed for national significance. We're seeking now to devise a more intentional program of acquisition. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of views here. This is the new reading room. It's a lot larger. There's more workstations, and that's where the volunteers spend their time digitising documents and photographs and so forth. We've got about 7,000 books around the walls there. Next slide, please. Upstairs, there's a nice space for a kitchen and lunchroom for the volunteers and our office area. We've managed to retain some of the features of the building, although it's not a railway building. It has some industrial bric-a-brac that we've left there, which gives it a certain character. Next slide, please. And then downstairs we have our bookshop and a cafe. We've put in a cafe there, so we're really trying to change introduce more engagement from the public so that they become interested. With that previous building I showed you, it was very unlikely that anyone who didn't know about us or didn't know what was inside would have come in. They just it just didn't look a very appealing place to visit, whereas now we want to try and open it up to a much broader range of people. Next slide, please. And then again, that's another view of the bookshop there, and on the right there we've got our gas suppression system for the archive room and archive acid-free cardboard archive boxes. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about significance. We had an assessment under the Community Heritage Grants program for significance of the collection, and Adrian Cunningham actually was the person who did the assessment. He spent 3 days absorbing all the information that we fed him, and he found that the collection was of national significance. So this is a really significant step forward for us, if you pardon the pun, because we're hopeful that it will raise the status of the society and its archives, and also open it up to a whole new range of professional people that might not have known it existed or what we were about. He did find, there's a few other things to read there, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that the collection is indeed the largest and most significant of its kind in Australia. Next slide, please. There were also some sub-collections that were found to be of national significance, including the photo collection. Adrian said in his report there's no other single collection of railway photographs in Australia that comes anywhere near the size, coverage and accessibility of that held by the ARHS. And within the photo collection, yes, there's a lot of photos of trains, and if that's not your thing, then it's not necessarily very interesting, but there are a very large number of other photographs which show urban environments, country towns, important people, all those sorts of things. So they're very useful for heritage work. Next slide, please. We also have 60,000 engineering drawings. I think I mentioned before what they were of, but Some of them are very beautiful, and they do represent a different era for the development of engineering and technology in Australia. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of the drawings of the bridge over Argyle Street in Mossvale. So these drawings are in more than 100 years old in many cases. Next slide, please. And I should say that the facility we have allows us to protect and preserve drawings like that in a space that's where the conditions are controlled and they're protected from fire and water damage. And the next phase with the grant is we've just secured the next round or the next grant for a preservation needs analysis. So that's an exciting development. Collection management. So we've implemented Recollect as a system for managing the whole collection, and it's also the portal to a large part of the collection online. And we hope that we'll start to see interest from people outside of Sydney and maybe even outside of Australia accessing our collection. Next slide. And the interface with Recollect is very good. It's quite simple to use. And it's very flexible, so you can add more records, you can add different types of records, and we found that it's a really good system for a small museum or gallery such as ours. So next slide, please. So just to conclude, we've undergone quite a transition and still in progress, but we want to make our resources accessible for the public and for industry. We're looking to grow our membership so that we're sort of set up for a new generation, if you like, and we want to build community engagement. We're looking to raise our professional standards and our profile, and we want to share the story and the influence of railways in New South Wales and Australia. We're trying to adopt best practice community archive standards and the adoption of Recollect as our collection management system. And we have a collection of national significance which we aim to promote and share with a wider audience. If you go to the next slide, please. So if you want to learn more, you can get in touch with us. I've left off our web address there, but if you could just Google us, or you can look at our social media pages as well, where we aim to be posting more of what we have in our collection. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Well done, James. We have 1 minute for questions if anyone has some. Lady in the lovely pink over there.
Hello, I'm Kate Fulford from Prince Alfred College Archives in Adelaide. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask you, how do you manage your digital storage, seeing as you're accessing Recollect for presentation of your materials? Please?
Yeah, probably manage is the operative word there. We've got a large amount of server storage where a lot of the digitised material is already stored, and it's been stored there for 20 years and growing. We've paid for a large amount of cloud storage with Recollect, and it's fair to say we haven't filled that up, and we're not getting the payback on that yet. So it's a bit of a long-term investment, but eventually we hope to move away from server storage and make more use of the cloud storage. But a lot of these things are managed on the smell of an oily rag because we're very few people stretched across, technology and archives and the subject matter itself. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, and I know we haven't got much more time, so I'll email you.
Sure, please
Wonderful.
do.
Thank you, James. That was fantastic. Excellent to see some excellent archiving happening, especially around trains. And we do have another train speaker, but not quite yet.